So quantum computing, as you know, is one of the very exciting fields, and it is the very early in its stage of evolution, in the sense that, when we started computing way back in 1940s of the last century, where we were, right, with transistors and diodes, and how we moved from that to solid state electronics and then moved to the present day computing. Quantum computing currently is at that stage. So this is a 3-part series. We will have 3 different sessions every Friday. The first session is Dr. Gopal's session. He will talk about the quantum computing and the overview of quantum computing, the introduction to how quantum computing works, and some of those aspects. And the second and third sessions, we will go into the programming aspects of it in terms of the logic behind quantum computing, like how we have AND gates, OR gates, XOR gates, what is the equivalent of quantum computing. And in the third session, we will have some hands-on as well. So with that, I will let Nirja introduce Dr. Gopal. Over to you, Nirja.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, one and all. I take this opportunity to welcome the distinguished members, session speakers, and participants to the 3 weeks Quantum Computing Primer Workshop. It is my privilege to introduce Dr. Gopalakrishna Behera. Dr. Gopalakrishna Behera is a distinguished member and lead enterprise architect in Wipro Technologies with 25 plus years of extensive experience in the ICT industry. He serves as an advisory architect, application modernization, and continue to work as a subject expert and author. He is certified in the Open Group Architecture Framework, Amazon Web Services Architect, IBM Cloud Solutions, and United Nations Public Administration Network. He published a number of research papers, books in IT industry. He has been a speaker at national and international forums. He has been a panel member for multiple business and technical forums like IGI Global, American Economic Association, and Premium College Meets. He is a recipient of EA Hall of Fame International Award and Professionalization Award. I hope today's session will help us to understand the quantum computing and its possibilities. Thanking you all. Now I request Dr. Gopalakrishna Behera sir to hand over.
Thank you, Nirja, for your kind words and your introduction. And thank you, Arvind, for being a motivator always for these type of sessions. Nirja, can you enable my share option, please?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah. My sharing option, screen sharing is disabled. Can you enable it?
I have enabled it, sir. Please see once.
No, it still says disabled share. So.
Nirja, you have to enable it to all panelists, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sir, you're able to see the screen?
Yeah, sir. You can see it.
Okay. Thank you.
Make
thank
it
you very much.
Full screen and slideshow mode, please.
Sir, I've done that.
No, we can't see your slideshow. We are only seeing the.
How is it now? Full screen?
You might have to share the full screen. That is, I think this is it is sharing the design mode.
I'm sharing the window.
Yeah, I think that was the problem. Maybe you can unshare and share again.
Yeah, sure, sir. I don't have access to share the entire screen. It's only sharing the window. Okay, I'm sharing it. Let me know. Is it okay now?
Yes, Gopal.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Good evening, all, and good afternoon and good morning, the people joined from other country. So today, my session is about the quantum computing, introduction to the quantum computing. So what exactly is the quantum computing is, and how is it different from classical computing, and what is that we leverage to do a quantum computing processing, and what kind of quantum computers are currently in use, and where is the industry heading, in terms of, leveraging the quantum computing, and also try to look at the some of the use cases where, we can leverage quantum computer, which is better than the classical computing. And then finally look at the future trends of quantum computing. So this is what I'm going to cover. So please bear with me. I'll make it more interesting and try to minimize as much the quantum mechanics concept as possible, and try to bring in more of industry related information as a part of my presentation. So if you look at the agenda, what I said, we are going to set the context and background, what kind of challenges that we are facing today in terms of, leveraging or using classical computers, and what is the difference between classical computer and the quantum computing, and then try to bring in a new concept, what is called qubits, based on which the quantum computing has been performed today, and various kind of quantum computers that are available in the market, and then what kind of research that is going on. And we also look at the quantum algorithms that are available today, and using which you kind of generate, create some solutions to the problems, real-time problems that we are facing today, and what kind of platform and technology landscape that are being available, who are the industry leaders in the quantum computation, usage of quantum computation or computing, and then industry use cases and the opportunities. So this is what I'm going to cover today. And now look at, some of the examples, what I'm trying to bring in, which highlights the challenges of classical computing. See, for example, what I projected here is the business maze, right? So if you look at the business maze, right, where our kids are continuously playing, sometimes we also get play along with the kids, right? What exactly we're going to do here is we try to choose the right path, entry and the exit points, right? So in the process, what we do is we try to explore each path one by one, and then try to find the correct answer. So in the process, we kind of spend a lot of time, right? Choosing every time you do an error, you again start from the beginning, and then try to choose the right path. Okay, so it's a time consuming process. Now imagine, in the process, what you are trying to do is you are trying to find each path one at a time, one by one we are trying to doing it. Now imagine you have a computer where, you have a system where you explore all the paths at the same time, and trying to do everything at the same time, and then come out with the solution. So that is where the power of quantum computing is coming in. Okay, so having set this example, so if you want to achieve this using a classical computing, right, it takes a lot of time. Okay, it may be a few hours. Whereas if you try to do it the same thing using a quantum computer, probably you can achieve this in less than a few seconds. okay, or less than a minute of time, you will be able to achieve the correct path to move from entry to the exit. So this is one of the example. Now I'm extending this to our industry applications. Say, for example, you want to have a better transportation by optimizing the traffic flow, right? Right. For example, you know, most of us, you know, live in metro cities within Hyderabad, right? If I start within India, like, you know, Bangalore or Mumbai, Delhi, and Hyderabad. So if I start going to office morning at 8 o'clock, by the time I reach office, it will be the lunchtime, right? So there is a lot of traffic jams, and then, you know, chokes that is happening, and you try to enable the Google Map and try to look at it, kind of. So using this quantum computing, you kind of, you know, improvise the transportation, or look at the optimization of the traffic flow, and look at where the less traffic is in place, and then try to look at the most feasible pathway, such that, you know, you can save the lot of time. The another example is, you know, where the quantum computing is grossly used is, you know, supply chain optimization, in terms of, you know, what is called responding faster, or increasing the sales market, or, you know, business improvement, business optimization, or, you know, increase the sales for an organization. So these are the areas where, you know, we try to bring in quantum computer, where we have a lot of challenges to solve this using a classical computing. The another example, you know, why I wanted to show the challenges that we face with the classical computing. See, for example, the diagram here shows, you know, we had a birthday celebration of Arvind, and then we all went to a restaurant, around 10 people. And 10 seats were allocated to us, right? So what is the possible ways, you know, all these 10 people that can be arranged, sitting into sitting into the various combinations? Immediate answer will be 10 permutations. So the best solution is the factorial 10 is where, you know, the seating can be done, right? So what are the ways, you know, you can arrange? If I can convert the 10 factorial into 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and multiply all these things, the 10 factorial is coming out to be 3.6 million ways. So if we have to arrange for 10 people, for a party to do a seating arrangement, or, you know, to get aligned into occupy the seats, right? We have the combination of, you know, 3.6 million ways. So now look at, you know, the growth, or, you know, if we have it is kind of, you know, how it is, the arrangement is happening is in terms of factorial 2, right? 2 to the power of 2, 2 to the power of 3, to the power of 4, kind of. So every time, you know, you add a new guest, right, the number of ways they can be arranged grow exponentially. So if I take this as an example and try to look at, you know, the classical computing, you know, how it can be done. For example, there is a number which is a 5,000 digit number. I want to do a factorial of that, you know, to find out what are the number of ways it can be arranged, that particular number. The classical computer actually takes 5 trillion years of time to find the factor of 5,000 digit number. Whereas if you use a quantum computer, we could finish it the same thing in 2 minutes of time. So that's the power of a quantum computer. Okay, so the industry usage, or, you know, industry application of this particular quantum computer, if you look at, it can be used predominantly in the drug discovery. So some of the leading pharmaceutical companies like Novartis or Roche and other pharmaceutical companies, Reddy Laboratories and other things. So they continuously in the job of for finding a drug or discovering the new drug. So that is where this will help them in finding out the multiple options or multiple permutations and combinations of finding out the new drug. Okay, so today, if at all, we had a proper quantum computer in place, we would have got the drug discovery would have happened for COVID-19 also. Okay, while we have the vaccination, the drug discovery would have been in place. While the research is still going on to finding out the drug for COVID-19, because the number of cases of COVID-19 are exponentially increasing. It is not a linear increase. Right. So drug discovery is one example, and then chemical and material formation. So to form a new materials using a multiple combination of chemicals, which are part of your periodic table. I try to jumble them or mix them in different compositions, and then try to create a material formation for for example, aircraft manufacturing, or you want to manufacture a satellite body or aircraft body where it should have a low density, and it should be able to withstand high temperatures, and it should be able to sustain the high pressure or low pressure. All these various permutations and combinations, we need to have a material that needs to be discovered, and that is where you try to run multiple algorithms using a quantum computer, and then come out with a new material formation. And then coming to your financial industry, I'm also listed another example is trading, online trading, where lakhs of people will be continuously doing the trading, and then in the fraction of second you do the selling and buying of the shares or mutual funds and whatnot, right? So we need to know which share is doing better, and what needs to be purchased, and know what needs to be sold off, kind of analysis. The quantum computer helps you in doing that. Similarly, the financial portfolio management, the quantum computer is giving you a better performance, or quick response compared to the classical computers, which the challenge that we are facing it today. Now, another interesting example, I just thought of sharing with you. The concept is called exponential scaling. You look at the chessboard, right? All of us are familiar with the chessboard. Chessboard will have 64 squares, right? As an example, right, one of the a person within the kingdom went to the king, and then gave him a nice gift, which is made of nice wood. Chessboard is given to the king, and the king got impressed and then asked him to have any wish. I'm going to fill it. So what the person asked the king is actually, give me one grain of rice first day, and then double it every day. Okay. So if you try to equate that into your the mathematical expression, right? So you see, a second day it will be 2, and third day it will be 4, and next day it will be 8, and then after a week, a teaspoon of rice. And if you look at after a month, right? After a month, it is almost like 2 to the power of 30. It is equal to rice production of a small country, right? Similarly, if you look at after the 64 days, the rice grain is equal to size of a Mount Everest. So you see 2 to the power of 64. I mean, I can't read out that number. So 18, 446, 744, 073, 709, 551, 616 grain of rice. So this is one example which talks about, how do you solve combinatorics matrix, or combinatoric is mathematics, using a quantum computing, where we have a challenge of meeting the requirement, or doing the calculation using an exponential scaling using a classical computer. So that is where the power of the quantum computing is coming into picture. Now, coming to the industry application, for example, I depicted here, I'm saying detect viral spread. See, for example, there is a virus, one of the person got infected by a virus. The spread of virus within the body, it goes to the millions of parts of the body, or the neurons of the body are getting affected. So and the effect is not linear. It is more of a exponential scaling, or exponentially the virus spread happens in exponential way. So to detect that virus spread, right, we kind of leverage quantum computers. And similarly, the global warming, to detect the global effect of global warming and the influence of global warming, the quantum computer will help you in finding out, the reasons for the global warming, why the global warming, what kind of parameters are influencing the global warming in terms of, the emission of carbon dioxide or emission of nitrogen, and which area what, and what is the density, etc., etc., etc. So all these concepts are actually setting up the context, saying that the classical computers today, while they do a fantastic job in terms of solving the linear equations, or linear problems that we are facing today, but they are also limited in terms of some of the examples what I quoted today, right? So that is where the importance, or the value of quantum computing is coming in, and that is where the need of quantum computing is required for us to move forward. Now, having said that, I wanted to set up now the evolution of computing. I mean, we all know, right? So not to bore much on this, right? So how is that evolution is happening? So we are currently at 5th generation. And if you look at the first generation, from vacuum tubes to punch cards to transistors and magnetic tapes as a second generation, then move on to third generation integrated circuits and largely capacity disk, etc. And then 72 to present fourth generation, we have microprocessors. And as a part of fifth generation, we are now in an era of artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain technology, and the quantum computers. So since the session is more on the quantum computer, so I included the fifth generation is more of a quantum computers. So what is that? The quantum computing is used for? So I'm just making a statement. The quantum computing is used to process complex computations, okay, difficult computations, like exponential scaling, factorial of or probability of finding a particle, or probability of finding a large digit numbers, kind of computations, solutions, and in few seconds, which generally takes more time using a classical computer. So more time is actually a number of years actually. So that is where the quantum computing, the definition is coming in. Now, what is quantum computing? So we are saying quantum computing so far, right? So what is a quantum? Quantum is a minimum amount of any physical entity involved in any interaction. Okay. So what I'm saying is, for example, a photon is a quantum. A beam of light is a quantum, right? Or atomic, subatomic particles, right? Electrons are pair of electrons, or fermions, or neutrinos, which be part of some interactions, interactions between them is coming out to be, or can be correlated, or can be stated as a quantum. So I'm saying quantum, simple definition of quantum is a minimum amount of any physical entity involved in an interaction is called quantum. And then quantum computing is a computing using quantum mechanical phenomena, okay, such as superposition and entanglement. So we are going to look at what is superposition and entanglement in quantum computing. So it is nothing but, what I'm saying is that quantum computing is a computing using quantum mechanical phenomena such as superposition and entanglement. Now you look at the two diagrams, which, I mean, the diagram side by side, where I depicted classical computer and a quantum computer. So look at the classical computer. Generally, we all know, right? The input is the binary bits. It's all what is called a clear values, or distinct, discrete the values, right? Either it is 0 or 1. So that is going to be an input, and it kind of undergoes some logical operations, right? What kind of logical operations we are all familiar with, we studied, right? It may undergo an AND operation, NOR operation, or NOT, or XOR gate, or NAND kind of operations, which I'm calling it. I mean, we generally call it as logical gates or logical operations, labeled as classical, right? And the output is also going to be in terms of 0 and 1s only. So the binary bits. So if I give a input as a binary bit for a classical computer, I get an output is also a binary bit using a classical computer. Now look at the quantum computer, right? So what is that I'm going to give? I'm going to give the input as a qubit. So it's a combination. It's not just a bit, but it's a combination of bits, right? That is where I'm calling it as a qubit. So the input is the qubit, which is a combination of qubit. For example, it can be either a dual state, which is a real plus an imaginary state of the atomic or subatomic particle. So the qubit could be in the form of like 0 plus 1, 0 and 1 together. And the output is also, you see, 0 and 1 coming together, or the process, and then getting it as a qubit only. I am going to show you what is qubit exactly going forward, but it is undergoing a different operation, which is called unitary matrix, right? It is not like a single logical operation, but it's more of a unitary matrix. Generally, these kind of matrix are represented using achieved using the gates called quantum gates. Some of them being Poly-X, and then Hadamard gates, and CNOT gates, and other gates, which we are going to discuss in the next session, right, by Arvind. So effectively, what I'm trying to say here is, for a quantum computer, it is not a binary bit which go as an input. It is a qubit which you go as an input, and you measure the result, or you get the result in the form of qubits only. Okay. Therefore, what I'm saying is the quantum computing greatly enhances how information is stored and processed. Okay, and allows it to perform more efficient algorithms than classical computing. This is what we discussed. Now, just trying to give a quick comparison. I mean, this has been discussing so far, right? So I'm saying best way to understand quantum computing is to contrast with classical computing that we currently use. So classical computing, I'm saying electromagnetism governing electric circuits. It's a quantum mechanics govern subatomic particles. Classical electrodynamics, quantum electrodynamics, And the classical computing is more, based on Moore's law, right? Every 2 years, the number of transistors are based on placed on the chip are getting doubled, right? So that is a principle based on which the classical computing has been developed so far. Whereas in quantum computing, we are saying the power of subatoms. Subatoms, I was referring to the electrons and neutrinos, fermions, ions, and other things, right? So they're all subatoms and the molecules to perform memory and processing tasks. It is always in terms of 0 and 1, and whereas in this case, it's a kind of quantum bits, which you call it as qubits. I was saying just now, right? It's a superposition of 0 and 1. So something like, bracket 0 plus bracket 1 kind of. Whereas classical computing is more deterministic, whereas classical computing is more of a stochastic, means that the probability of finding the value is where you go, which you call it as a stochastic. Whereas a deterministic is you get a real value or an absolute value. And similarly, 2 to the power of n sequences available, but only one will be used at a time. In this case, quantum computing, we have 2 to the power of n sequences are available, but all will be used in parallel. So that is where the power of quantum computing is coming in. So you don't do it in a sequential way, but you do it in a parallel way. When you say parallel, you do a parallel computing, not a sequential computing. And in the case of classical computing, you kind of perform one operation at a time. That is where we are talking about. Whereas in quantum computing, all operations are performed at a time. Okay, single point of time you perform. So next one is, for example, a 64-bit classical computer operates the speeds measured in gigaflops, right? Billions of floating point operations per second. Whereas if you just pick up a 30-qubit quantum computer and then try to do a processing of 10 teraflops, trillions of floating point operations per second. So that is how it will be represented using, or achieved using a quantum computing. If you look at the diagram below, right, you see 0 and 1, they are digital bits in classical computing. And whereas if you see in quantum computing, it is represented like a matrix, right? The unitary matrix, alpha, beta, is a unitary matrix. And you see the electron, which is in spin up, 0. The electron which is represented down is 1. And the rotation of this electron, which has inclined, shown as a part of the superposition. So you always take the superposition of this particular particle, the particle or electron or any qubit. That is where while you take both the state of both the particles you consider, and the superposition of that will give you the qubit. So now see, having said that, I'm just trying to define what is a qubit, right? So you see in the diagram, right, you have the nucleus at the center, and then inner orbit, and then you have an outer orbit. So inner orbit, you call it as a ground state, which is represented wrongly here, but it should be inside the arrow. So when some light is falling onto the electron on the inner orbit, what will happen is the electron get excited and it moves into the next state, right? It moves into the next state. So when the electron is at a ground state, I'm calling it as a state 0 and the state 1. So that is why that is where the excited state is represented by Dirac 1 or eigenvalue of 1, and the ground state is represented by Dirac 0 or eigenvalue of 0. This is the representation of a qubit in 2 energy levels of an atom. Now, what I'm saying here, a bit of data is represented by a single atom, that is in 1 or 2 states denoted by 0 or 1. A single bit of this form is known as qubit. So if you see the diagram and the right hand side, right, the classical bit, see, you have 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, distinguishedly separated. Either it will be 0 or either it will be 1. Whereas in a case of quantum bit, one bit is represented as alpha Dirac 0 plus beta Dirac 1. So it is both 0 and 1. Simultaneously, it will be both 0 and 1. And if you try to look at all in classical bit, it will always have only 1 out of 2 to the power of n permutations, right? Whereas in quantum bit, you have all 2 to the power of possible permutations achieved at one time, right? So that is what is the representation of qubit, and the concept of qubit can be carried by these atoms, ions, protons, and electrons, and which will be used as a computer memory and as a processor. So this is where a single bit of this form where it was represented as alpha 0 plus beta 1 is called a qubit. I want to further while it's more of a kind of a physics oriented definition, trying to confuse more. So what is that? As a computer scientist, I just wanted to understand what is a qubit. So I've given you the example which the Microsoft has depicted here, which is very good example. You see the comparison between bit versus qubit, right? Where you see the classical bits, empty 0 bit 1, which is filled, which is bit 2. Whereas in qubit, you see 1/3 of 0 and 2/3 of 1. So that is what is a qubit. So you see it is existing in both the states, right? Both 1/3, both in 0 and 1 form. Similarly, if you look at the number of balls in jars, right? 20 red beads, say it is equal to 0. And 20 blue beads equal to 1 in a classical bit form, right? In a qubit representation, it will be actually see 8 out of 20 of 0 and 12 out of 20 of 1. So it is existing. You see that both 0 and 1 are part of in a single jar, right? Similarly, you see the other one, you just toss a coin, right? In a classical way, either it will be 0 or either it will be 1. Whereas in qubit form, right, there is a 50% chance it will land in 0 or 50% chance it will land in 1. So that is where the comparison between classical bits and the quantum bits are coming in. Now, I just wanted to say what is qubit as a summary. It is nothing but a basic unit of information, correct? And then it's a fundamental building block of quantum computer. And it represents a 0, a 1, or any proposition of 0 and 1 in superposition of both the states, with a certain probability of being 0 and certain probability of being 1. It consists of 2 levels, Dirac 0 and Dirac 1, or bracket 0, bracket 1, described by Dirac bracket notation. And it is represented by 2-dimensional vector space. 0 is represented as 1, 0, and 1 is represented as 0, 1. So this is the kind of the concept based on which the quantum computer has been built. Okay. Now we try to understand the properties, 2 important properties of quantum computer or qubits. One is superposition. The other one is entanglement. So I'm going to introduce now what is a superposition and what is an entanglement. Look at the example first, right? See, for example, I have a coin, right? And then try to do a tossing of a coin. So coin will have 2 states. Either it is a head or a tail. If you try to look at the end state, when I start, it may be 1 state, head, say, and then finally it may be at another state, the end state, which may be a tail, for example. Now, while it is tossing, right, while it is on the space, it is actually will not be able to tell whether it is a head or a tail. Okay, it can be head or tail at the same time. So that phenomena, we are calling it as a superposition. And this is exactly the same phenomena based on which the qubit works. Okay, so extend this. So what I'm saying here is the superposition is the combination of all possible states of quantum particle. Okay, so while the coin is rotating on the space in air, right? It is either a head or a tail. It can be a head or a tail at the same time, right? We don't know. So that phenomena, you extend it. I'm saying it is a combination of all possible states of quantum particle. For example, the electron has two possible quantum states, whether it is spin up or a spin down. When electron is in superposition, it is both up and down at once. Each electron, until it is measured, will have a finite chance of being at the either side. Unless you measure it, we never know whether it is a spin up or a spin down. Only when you measure it is observed to be in a specific spin state. So this is what is the principle of superposition, which the qubits are based on. So what I'm saying is a qubit is a superposition in both the states, a Dirac 1 and Dirac 0 at the same time. So that is what the superposition is. Now, if you try to look at in a little bit of physics context, right? So you see the ground state and an excited state, and a light a photon is falling onto electron, right? I'm calling when it is a ground state, it is state 0, and then when it gets excited, right? It moves from ground state to the excited state, and there is a possibility that you see that it may exist in both the states, 0 and 1. So this is what is your qubit is. So I'm saying a qubit is in superposition is both the states 1 and 0 at the same time. So you see 0 and then embedded by 1. So this is exactly the qubit superposition principle is. Okay. Now, if you look at a 3-bit qubit register, equally weighted superposition of all possible states will be represented by the Dirac psi equal to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, so on up to 1, 1, 1. So that is what is your 3-bit qubit register. Okay. So how it has come in classical 2468 becomes 248 16, then 2 to the power, then 32, and then 64, so on and so forth in quantum computing. So that is where this representation is coming into. Now, the another property of qubits is entanglement. So what is this entanglement is, right? So I give another example, right? The simple example. So we are just going to going to an office, and then wanted to pick up a breakfast from a restaurant, right? And then it's a kind of you don't have time, so you just picked up and you ordered it, and then the person has delivered you 2 boxes. 2 exactly similar boxes, one consisting of idli and other one consisting of dosa, right? And you're taken those 2 boxes. And then what you try to do is when you open one of the, and we don't know which box is idli, which box is dosa, right? And then once you wanted to eat, you opened one box and you found that idli in one box. Naturally, the other box will be a dosa, right? So I'm saying here the idli and dosa are entangled. Okay, so take this as an example, and then let us extrapolate this to the quantum entanglement. So what is that I'm saying is the quantum entanglement is a phenomena that occurs when a group of qubits interact with other qubits to form a single system and influence each other. So one qubit will influence the other qubit. or a group of qubits will influence the group of other qubits, right? When entangled, two qubits will provide information on each other, even if you only measure one of them. So if you know the status, if you know the state of one qubit, you will be able to know the status of the another qubit. So that is where the entanglement comes in. The states of entangled qubits cannot be described independently of each other. So they are always together. They always described as a system. They always described as together. Even they are infinitely far apart. Measuring the state of one of the qubit allows us to know the state of the other without needing to measure it directly. So if you know the state of one qubit, and however far they are separated, this kind of postulate, right? Even if they are separated an infinite distance, you will be able to know, or you will be able to measure the state of the other qubit. That is where is a quantum entanglement. Einstein is actually proposed this quantum entanglement concept, where he said, suppose I have two electrons, one in my lab, which are entangled, one in my lab, the other one is in the space, one on the earth, other one is on the space, and they are already entangled. If I found that one electron is a spin up, say 1, the other electron which is in the space is spin down, it is represented, it is 0, because they are entangled. So this effect is called as a spooky effect by Einstein. That is where the spooky effect has come into the picture. The same concept has been implemented in designing the qubits, which we are calling it as a quantum entanglement. So adding more qubits and entangling them will help you to solve more complicated problems. So what will happen is, while you perform some complex algorithms, or they're trying to solve complex solutions, you try to pick up a set of qubits, and then based on the property of this qubit entanglement, you will be able to solve those problems which more accurate and then short intervals of time. So just to summarize, so when entangled, two qubits will provide information on each other, and even if you only measure one of them, the other one you will be able to know the status. And the states of entangled qubit cannot be described independently by each other. So they always go together. And adding more and even when they are separated far apart, measuring the state of one qubit allows us to know the state of other without needing to measure it directly. So this is where the quantum entanglement is coming into the picture. So far what I did was, I introduced the challenges of classical computers, and then I try to bring in the concept of qubit, and then try to bring in the concept of qubit properties like superposition, and what is superposition, and then the quantum entanglement, or how these qubits get entangled using quantum computers. Now we try to understand what are the quantum computers and their industrial applications, and what kind of algorithms are currently in use. So the evolution of quantum computer, is, I just read out for you. So the entire process has started by Richard Feynman, predicting the dual nature of the electron. It exists in both particle as well as wave. So that is where 1959, and then it got extended by Feynman again, creating the mechanics, laws of quantum mechanics. Then 85, David Dash, the father of quantum computing, described the construction of quantum logic gates. 94, Peter Shor came up with quantum algorithms, leveraging what David Dash had done it. 97, Low Grover developed the quantum search algorithm. So people started working on the algorithms. So Grover algorithm is a very famous algorithm used to do the search process, very complex searches. And then 98, there is a first quantum computer of 2 qubit quantum computer was discovered by Mark Cubbins and Isaac Chung, right? And MIT started, announcing a qubit quantum computer, 7-qubit quantum computer in 2000. And National Institute of Standards and Technology announced a 4-qubit qubit quantum computer in 2000 itself. And then 2011, so immediately what happened is, there is a tremendous focus and then research going on. And then people started working towards finding out more and more quantum computers with more number of qubits. That is where the first commercially available quantum computer was offered by D-Wave Systems in 2011. And in 2016, all these big giants joined, right? Amazon, IBM, they come out with the quantum computers, and then they kind of enabled these quantum computers to access using a cloud through an internet. Then America started, come out with 2018 a National Quantum Initiative Act. They published and then the further research got accelerated. And 2019 is where, the Microsoft announced Azure quantum computer, Google announced quantum computer. And then 2020, these services are available to the partners. So today, this Microsoft quantum computer, or IBM quantum computer, or some of this Amazon and probably Google, the quantum computer, you will be able to access it sitting at home. So from remotely, you will be able to access it, and then perform some quantum algorithms, and then solve some complex problems, right? So that is where we are. And India is also spending, a lot of a big initiative happening from NASSCAM. And in India also, we have a lot of research going on in quantum computing. Okay, having said that, so I just wanted to say, this is all repetition, so I don't want to spend much time on this, but just wanted to say, 2012, right? A French physicist by name Serge Haréco and Dr. David Wineland of US, he is also a physicist. They won the Nobel Prize for their work on quantum computer. So see, look at what Nobelprize.org is saying. Their groundbreaking methods have enabled this field to research to take the very first step towards building a new type of superfast computer based on quantum physics. Perhaps the quantum computer will change our everyday lives in this century in the same radical way as a classical computer did in the last century. So this is what the Nobelprize.org says about the discovery of quantum computing work done by these physicists. Then we kind of trying to compare the futures of classical versus quantum computer. So the measurement, power, computing, temperature, usage, computation, storage, gates, and security. So this is kind of very interesting slide thought of sharing with you. So measurement is 0 and 1, whereas in this case it is qubits represented by both 0 and 1 at the same time. Very, very important point. Then the power increases, the number of transistors increases in a classical computer. It's a linear increase, right? Whereas in a quantum computer, the power increases exponentially in proportion to number of qubits. That's what we just discussed about exponential scaling, right? So that is where the quantum computing is coming into the picture. Computation, logical operations, we know unitary operations, temperature, it operates at room temperature or with less error rate is a classical computer. And whereas in quantum computer, it operates at very low temperatures. I'm going to show that diagram. We need to take the quantum computer or you maintain a very low temperature. If you increase the temperature, what will happen is there is a decoherence that takes place, and then there is a higher error rates that's happening. And we use classical computer everyday processing, and then in this case it is optimization problems, data analysis, simulation, all those things, right? One operation at a time, whereas 2 to the power of n operations. Storage, n bit storage holds one value from 0 to 2. In this case, the storage holds 2 to the power of n operations. Truth table, in this case, it is unitary matrix. Security, it is less secure, whereas quantum computer, it is much secure, encryption based on quantum properties, right? So this is a basic comparison between classical computer and a quantum computer. How is this quantum computer architecture look like? The basic building blocks, how it look like? For example, on the rightmost side, you are there, right? The business applications, high-level language, or your enterprise systems, or you are sitting at remotely and trying to access the quantum computing. So which are all the layers you need to undergo? So through network, then you get into quantum programming environment, then into classical computer interface, then into quantum processing unit, then into quantum hardware. So I kind of created this as the 5 layers, 2 layers into five blocks. The 2 layers being quantum computing layer, the other one is classical computing layer. So assume that quantum computing layer is more towards the owner of a quantum computer, for example, IBM or Google or Amazon or say for example Microsoft. So it consists of three blocks, building blocks. One is quantum hardware, which consists of qubit connectors, and then how do you connect these qubits using interconnecting circuits and control operations, and then finally the quantum RAM is everything comes under the block of quantum hardware, and that get being connected to a quantum processing unit, which consists of quantum registers, quantum logic gates, and a quantum memory, and then try to establish the integration between the quantum and the classical computing layers, which I am calling it as quantum computing interface. Then get into a quantum programming environment, which is more of a quantum assembly language and quantum algorithms, where generally we trying to play a major role, right? Either you access these algorithms or you try to create these algorithms, and then you need to store them into a database, which is a cloud data center or a data store. And then through a network, your business applications have been accessing these particular algorithms, or the business logic that is being processed using the quantum computing layers. So this is how the quantum computing architecture look like: 2 layers and 5 blocks. I just wanted to show you the block diagram also, not to spend more time on this. So remote user or a PC interface, you are there, business application, and cloud data center provides user interface, access data storage. Then you get into your control subsystems. I use a term called cryostat, providing isolating environment. So we discussed this, right? So for a quantum computer to operate, it has to be maintained at very, very low temperature. Your QPU, quantum processing unit, has to be at very low temperature. So it should, and it has to be shielded by thermal as well as the pressure and other parameters should not temperature. These should not impact your quantum computer. So the qubit surrounded by connecting wires has been shown here. From there, you have a cryogenic circulation, and then your quantum computing block diagram. You see here, your temperature is represented in Kelvin. Starting at room temperature at the top, the temperature decreases each level until it closes to absolute zero, where the QPU itself is located. So below is where your QPU is. QPU stands for quantum processing unit. So that is where your QPU is there, and those are the low temperature that needs to be maintained for a quantum computing to run. Then moving on to the types of quantum computers. So today we have 5 dominant or widely used quantum computers. One is superconducting based quantum computers, nuclear magnetic resonance quantum computers, ion trap based quantum computers, and topological based quantum computers, and quantum dots quantum computers. You see, the superconducting based quantum computers are designed by IBM, Google, and Alibaba. So they are the one who kind of use this superconducting or kind of designed superconducting based quantum computers. Similarly, the NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance quantum computers, IBM has this. And Honeywell and IonQ, ion trap based quantum computers, and Microsoft uses what is called the quantum computer called topological quantum computer, and Intel is quantum dots quantum computer. So these are the various kind of quantum computers that are currently in use, or the types of quantum computers that are in use. Then comes the so having understood what are quantum computers, types of quantum computers, how a quantum computer architecture look like, which are all the 2 layers, which are all the 5 building blocks the quantum computer has, what kind of temperatures the quantum computer operates today, and who are all the industry leading manufacturers, or the people, I mean the industry, the companies that have designed quantum computers and which can be consumed by us today to perform some operations, we discussed, right? Now I wanted to introduce what is called quantum algorithms. Okay, so there's a vast number of algorithms that are available today. We also spoke about Shor algorithm. We spoke about Grover's algorithm, which I'm going to talk now. So there is a space, a repository, a central repository where we have all these algorithms are available. We can leverage these algorithms and then use them for our solving our some of the day-to-day problems, or we can also design the new algorithms based on the quantum gates that we're going to talk in the next session, and then come out with a new algorithm and to solve any of the business related problems, or day-to-day problems that we come across. So what is a quantum algorithm is? So algorithms, it helps to gain the speed and communicating with other computing tasks that are running on quantum computing processor or platform. QCP stands for quantum computing platform. So as a programmer, you should identify and design a suitable quantum algorithms which can solve the problem on hand. See, that's the beauty, right? So we have a quantum algorithm Ju, a site which is available. It provides a comprehensive catalog of quantum algorithms maintained by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. So this is accessible to everyone. So we can actually get into quantum algorithm Ju and then pick up whatever the relevant algorithm you want to use it. what is the purpose you want to use it, whether you want to use it for financial domain, whether you want to use it for a kind of solving some new discovery of the drug, or you try to perform something called the search operation, or something you want to do finding out the exponential problem solving, exponential problem solving, and other things. You can leverage all these algorithms. So it kind of categorized into 4 categories: algebraic and number theoretic oracular, and then simulation, optimization, mnemonics, and machine learning, and then other things. So quantumalgorithms.org is the site where you kind of look into for this algorithm. So what is the advantage? The quantum algorithm, I am saying quantum algorithm is a tool which help you tell you the computer what to do. One, it helps you in speeding up the calculations. It also provides you the robustness of your calculations. So having said that, just kind of listed a few algorithms for us. One is integer factorization. See, for example, a classical computer take 1,000 years to factor a 400-digit number, whereas a quantum computer, it will finish in 1 hour. Similarly, a classical computer would take 5 trillion years to factor 5,000-digit number we discussed earlier, right? The quantum computer can finish in 2 minutes. And a quantum computer with 2 qubits can factor a number with lengths of n bits, a binary. So this algorithm was developed, integer factorization algorithm was developed by Shor. That's where we are calling it as a Shor algorithm. Similarly, the second popular quantum algorithm is quantum database search. For example, you want to search the entire library of a Congress for one of the name, which is an unsorted database. You want to search. You see that classical computer will take almost 100 years, whereas a quantum computer is doing the same thing, the search operation of the name in half a second. So, and this algorithm was developed by Grover. So that is where we are calling it as a Grover algorithm. Similarly, in the security aspects of it, which generally you use it in the financial sector, which is called crypto analysis. So what it does is, capable of cracking extremely complicated codes. You want to break the password, very complex password, or some kind of encryption you want to decrypt it, or try to bring in an RSA encryption. Uses numbers with over 200 digits or so. To do this, the one of the algorithm that was developed is called hashing algorithm. So crypto analysis is where the hashing algorithm can be used. So you can kind of leverage any of these algorithms, use and then run your problems, and then the projects, whatever you are thinking of, by connecting it to one of these leading quantum computing vendor, say whether it is Microsoft or an IBM. So which Rekha is going to talk in the next session, right? Third session. Some more algorithms are listed below. So I'm saying semi-definite programming, quantum autoencoder, and all those things. You want to solve some modeling, some chemistry, finding optical combination of shortest route for visiting list of cities. So all those things, there is the algorithms called heuristic algorithms for robust and few qubit applications and other things. VQE is variational quantum eigensolver, can be used to solve these problems, right? So these are the various kind of quantum algorithms you can think of. All these algorithms are available in the available in the quantum algorithm Zoo. You can just go and look into it and then play around. Very useful, very interesting. Then comes the platforms and technology landscape. Just wanted to introduce, having understood now which are all the quantum algorithms, and then now what kind of algorithms that are available, and then how this quantum architecture look like. Now I just wanted to introduce what is called the platforms and the various technologies that are used by the leading quantum computing vendors, right? So if you look at the quantum technology areas, we kind of segregate them into three categories. One is quantum computing, other one is quantum communication, other one is quantum sensors. So you see, universal quantum computer, adiabatic computing, any quantum annealing, these are all part of your quantum computing. Networking and cryptography comes under communication. Monitoring and controls are quantum sensors. Who are all the players? You see, if you segregate these people into four categories, four buckets: end-to-end providers, hardware and system players, software service players, and specialists. You say that IBM, Google, Rigetti Computing, Microsoft, Alibaba, D-Wave Systems. All these are actually end-to-end providers. They give the software services. They also play in the system software layer. They also have systems, and then they also provide the quantum computing hardware. And some of the other companies like, IonQ, QTech, Intel, and other things, the more in the hardware space. Similarly, you see some companies like OneQubit, QCware, and Riverlane, and all in the software space. And then specialists, how best you kind of, give very, very specific solution-oriented kind of softwares that you develop. That is where the specialists are coming into. These are the companies which are, the players today. Now, one interesting point, this particular slide is, talks about, having said that, quantum algorithms, quantum logic gates, all this is fine, boss, which kind of programming languages we use, okay, and what kind of algorithms you leverage. Then how is this quantum circuits look like, and what is an assembly language that we can currently use. So we kind of created a table for you to understand what programming languages. So IBM uses what is called QSKit. So they come with the programming language which with full stack libraries, where you can write, simulate, and run the programs, which you call it as QSKit. And D-Wave has a version, and Rigetti, the third one is Rigetti, which is called Forest. Google, it's called Cirque, and Microsoft, it's called the Quantum Development Kit, based on the open source technologies. So we can actually download this and then deploy in our system, and then we can run these programs. Similarly, they have their own algorithms, created by these companies. Quantum algorithms, QSKit, Equa, QSAGE, TOQ, Grove, OpenFermion, Cirque, and QAsh is a very famous, currently used by the Microsoft. And similarly, quantum circuits, you see that, and assembly language, you see that. These are the kind of programming languages which we can think of, as on today. And Microsoft is the one which Rekha is going to show us about, how is this quantum development kit look like, and then how you will run this small logics, and then how do you build these algorithms and other things in the next sessions. And then comes the industry use cases. So this is one chart which talks about end-to-end industry use cases, spanned across all the multiple domains predominantly, and who are all the players who are using this today. So you see healthcare and pharma services, and then you see financial services, you see high tech, and then machine learning, then transportation, and energy. So these are the various domains where the quantum computing applications are being used. Some of them are in the more of a POC state, or some of them are in R&D stage and trying to establish the framework, and some of them is actually end user applications. So in a case of healthcare and pharma services, you can accelerate the drug discovery. So which is very, very important today, a need of an hour, right? We need a drug for COVID-19. So accelerating the drug discovery and drug design and molecular dynamics, optimizing the therapy treatment, especially treatments chronic diseases like cancer or any other major chronic diseases. We need to have most of the therapies are happening in a trial and error basis, right? We need to kind of establish and have an optimized way of treating these diseases. So that is where your quantum computing applications are coming into the picture, and try to bring in the new drugs, the time to market. Some of the industry players are BASF, JSR, Biogen, DuPont, Amgen, Dow Chemicals. So these are all chemical industries, very similar to your Novartis and Reddy Labs and other things. So they are the players who are in healthcare and pharma services. Similarly, when you move on to the financial services, trying to look at these trading strategies, and try to come out the portfolio optimization, and then try to look at the asset pricing and do a risk analysis and other things, and try to look at the market instabilities, and then move out of the market, right? So continuously monitor the market instabilities or increasing the sales and other things, in the form of the trading strategies, where we we are calling the financial services sector. They are using these quantum computing applications. Some of the banks like JP Morgan and Barclays and Commonwealth Bank, Goldman Sachs, they are actually using these quantum computing applications to do these activities, or the actions. Similarly, bidding strategies for advertisement, online product marketing, software verification, validation, in high-tech sector. In machine learning, detecting statistical anomalies, recognize the image. Image processing is the one big field. The pattern recognition and other things, and training the neural networks and finding circuit faults and other things. IBM, Telstra, Alibaba, Google, Microsoft, and Samsung and Baidu. So these are all the players who are using these quantum computing applications in machine learning space. They come out with their own algorithms which you can leverage. In transportation, self-driving cars, autonomous cars, air traffic management, managing transportation requests, goods delivery in a short intervals of time. We currently BMW, Daimler, NASA, Volkswagen has done a POC for one of the city to do these air traffic manage transportation requests and self-driving cars and other things. And then in energy sector, network design, energy distribution, oil well optimization, other things. So Dubai Electricity and Water Authority and British Petroleum are actually using these quantum computing applications. So these are the vast areas where the penetration of quantum computing applications are happening today, and the list is so on and so forth. It's continuously going to evolve. So right time for us to enter into the quantum computing computing domain. These are some of the examples, what I showcased here. So not to spend much time on this. The healthcare, cancer treatment solution, and then transportation, better optimizing the transport, traffic flow, and other things. Volkswagen using in city of Lisbon, right? And then meteorology, accurate weather prediction, and other things. Then interesting. So what kind of opportunities you see today, right? So what kind of skills are required? So you wanted to be a quantum computing scientist, you wanted to be a quantum computing engineer, or you wanted to be a quantum computing entrepreneur, or you wanted to be a quantum computing developer. What kind of skills you generally need to have? You need to be expertise, or at least you need to know 101, or little depth into quantum mechanics, linear algebra, probability, Fourier analysis, cryptography, low-level programming, algorithms, recursion theory, information theory, networking, and error correction codes. And then look at the central block, which is the quantum computing. See both basic research, applied research, and commercial applications. And then spanning into 3 areas like quantum computing, quantum communication, and quantum sensors. And all these things have been integrated or seamlessly connected with your other next generation technologies like AI, analytics, pattern matching, computer vision, communication, optimization, simulation, and search, and other things. And then finally, what kind of roles, once you are master into these areas, what kind of roles you can actually see is, quantum computing scientists, quantum computing engineers, quantum computing journalists, or an enterprise, or a quantum computing architect. There are some of the opportunities you can think of. And then which are all the research organizations within India? You see, government of India itself, during the 2021 budget, allocated 8,000 crores of quantum computing research over a period of 5 years. So government is extensively spending, the central government is extensively spending on Digital India initiative. One of the core area is quantum computing, and they very specifically allocated 8,000 crores to do research and then develop the applications using quantum computing. So it's a time for you to get into the quantum computing research and quantum computing, developing the quantum computing applications, and then doing some work on quantum computing. And we also see Indian Institute of Science, right? Bangalore, the IISc, they have initiated the quantum technology. And then DIFR, they also do quantum measurement and control laboratory they have set up. And there is an HRI, Harish Chandra Research Institute, Quantum Information Computation. I just listed only 3. There are many organizations and many industries, both IT and non-IT research labs. They started doing a lot of work on quantum computing. I listed just an indicative 3 areas. We also have a lot of startup companies and then mid-range and the large companies who are actually working on quantum computing in India. So you see Atomusky, Quantio, Computaco, QRD Lab, TAQ Bit Labs, QNU Labs, QPI AI Tech, QL Labs AI, Boson Q. So each one has specialized into a particular area: quantum computing plus AI, quantum computing plus education consulting areas, and then solutions in deep technology areas, quantum key distribution, quantum cryptography products. All these things, in India, you see a lot of work is going on in quantum computing areas. So what is the future outlook? You need to have a commercially available quantum computers, which is still the work is going on, and development methods needs to be arrived further. And each one is having their own quantum computing platforms and their own softwares, and we need to have a homogeneous quantum computing platform, and we should be able to port from one to other, IBM to Microsoft to Google. So we need to have a common programming language for quantum computing. Then this is a never-ending process, right? You need to develop new algorithms. And then quantum computer with superconductivity at room temperature is still we need to achieve that. As of today, we need to maintain a very low temperatures these quantum computers. So if you try to bring them at room temperature or little above, then it will be kind of, a commercially available, and then, large usage of quantum computers. So finally, thank you for bearing me the time, and that's it about introduction of quantum computing